morning, everyone. My name is Alexis Little. I am a fourth-year PhD candidate in the Ohio State's Education Policy Program. I will be presenting a component of my larger dissertation study that was conducted under the guidance of my PI and advisor, Dr. Karen Beard, who is with us right now. The title of the presentation is called Voices of the Unheard, a qualitative study of Black girls as experts in school support. So student removal as a form of school discipline has historically been a part of U.S. public school discipline. We found that in the early 1990s, this shift happened after the Guns Free School Act of 1994 passed. Public schools were now obligated to implement zero tolerance policies for gun-related, drug-related, and violent offenses. But policy evaluations soon found that the majority of cases where students were removed were for moderate, minor, and non-severe cases. Scholarship also found that educators and administrators who are implementing these discipline policies have a degree of implicit biases along the lines of race, gender, and other identifiers, as well as they culturally misread the people that are in their classrooms. So when you consider that suspensions and expulsions are associated with lower academic achievement for the student, but also for the school, this becomes concerning. The Department of Education periodically produces reports about different areas in education. The most recent report that they did on school discipline was in 2013. They used 2011-2012 data because it was the fullest data at that point. So as you can see, they broke it down. I pulled out a graph. They broke it down by students receiving out-of-school suspensions by gender. On the left, you can see the boys. On the right, you can see the girls. But for the boys, they broke it down by gender. They broke it down by race, and as you can see, Black boys have the highest cases of out-of-school suspensions. But if you go right over to the Black girls, that circle, you can see that Black girls, when you disaggregate for gender, have the highest rates of school discipline, and it's even comparable to their non-Black male peers. This is persisted. This is nothing new. Despite that fact, there is relatively less data on the experiences of Black girls in school discipline than their Black male peers, which leaves their stories unheard. So as an education policy scholar, having evidence-based practices to facilitate the well-being of students is very, very important. I'm gonna highlight another component from that study, which shows, you can't really see, but it starts at 1972, their graph. That's not when school disparities with school discipline started, but that's just a timestamp that they used. As you can see, 1972, and it stopped in 2011 because that was the data that they used. It's still persisting. So it's nothing new. This has always been a part of US public school. It was just exacerbated after the passing of that zero tolerance policies. So for Black girls, this starts as early as preschool, continues through elementary, middle school, and high school. So the general questions for my study: what is the current state of school discipline for Black girls in Ohio? What do Black girls believe are effective ways to mitigate school discipline issues? But the qualitative component that I'm focusing on today, what are Black girls' perceptions and experiences of school discipline? And how do Black girls imagine effective school discipline interventions and levels of support? The important component about this qualitative study is that I'm focused on what works. In education, we have to understand the problem and situate the problem, but just as important is understanding what works. Thinking about solutions to the issue and studying that as intently and with a high quality as we do the problem. So positive psychology counters the negative limitations found in coercive environments. It encompasses optimism and a propensity towards optimistic outcomes as an alternative to the traditional negative foci found in deficit frameworks prevalent in education research. I'm also using critical frameworks for the larger study, critical race theory, because I'm looking at Black girls as they have interactions with the school policy, but also looking at how power and economic levels play a part as well. Black feminist theory and intersectionality, because Black girls are both Black and female. So the structure of the larger study is that concurrent nested model. So with this model, one component of the study is going to be supporting the other. The qualitative component is supporting the quantitative. It is giving a voice to the school discipline records that I am analyzing. The school discipline records for elementary, middle, and high school, this is actually giving a voice to some of that, trying to contextualize what that means, but also focusing on what do they think are the solutions to this problem. So I used a group of 13 Black girls under the age of 18 who were participating in an OSU summer program, all from the Central Ohio area. They represented a variety of public, private, charter, alternative schools. Some of them had very, very high academic performance, some of them lower. Although it's not a statistically representative sample, it is a very diverse group of Black girls. So I conducted 2 focus group interviews and also individual interviews with the girls over the summer. I had all of the transcriptions. I had it professionally transcribed. I transcribed them after going through it, the whole qualitative process over and over again. I am just showing you the preliminary findings. So as you can see, I'm not sure if you can actually see it that well, but the words that are bigger are the codes that came up more frequently as I was coding the transcriptions. So you can see, for example, program, discipline, conceptualization, and things like that. So I'm going to move on to the preliminary findings. So for the first question, what are their perceptions of discipline at their school? It's very important to note that all of the girls believe that school discipline was necessary. They believe that for some cases, for some offenses, you should be expelled, you should be suspended. It's not that they don't believe school discipline should not exist. They believe also that there was inconsistencies. So for example, one teacher might discipline a student for dress code. That same teacher might not discipline another student. It's not consistent within the classroom and also within the school building. Another component of that is that they felt that relationships with the educators and administrators were really the determining factor of who's going to get disciplined and how. And it also leads to the next component, thinking about context. They all said you have to know what's going on. You might see a fight, but one girl may be defending herself and she did not want to fight. It might be a case of cyberbullying. It might be a case of you don't know what's going on at home. So if you just look at it as a point in time and you discipline them without any context, you're not going to give them the appropriate response to that. So the second question is looking at what do they believe are positive or effective supports, what is effective discipline, and what do they need to feel supported as Black girls. Again, this goes to open communication and positive relationships with their teachers, their peers, and also administrators. And then they also said, just like the presentation before me, they want programming. They need a space that is led by them, or also Black women, where they can express themselves and be themselves. So I'm going to pull out. I came across 10 emergent themes, but for the sake of time, I'm only going to address these 3. I'm going to highlight some of their voices. These are not all of them, but I'm going to highlight some of them from the focus group and individual interviews on these components. So for the relationships, the most important things were developing positive relationships and how powerful relationships could be in turning the trajectory of your whole day. Like, it's just not coming in and teaching, but also having a connection with the students. You could ask them if anything's going on at home. Find ways to know why she did what she did. Figure out if this is like an external thing. Instead of just suspending them because you really don't know what someone could be going through. Like, I wish the teachers or administrators would kind of just be there for you. You could be super mad going into school, then like a teacher could change that in one class. So for counseling and sharing feelings, some students didn't have counselors, some did. But in one case, they feel like for this above quote here, they have a counselor, but they do not feel like they can relate to the counselor. They don't feel like they could have a genuine conversation with them. And the next one, they have a counselor, but the counselor is so busy because it's one counselor for several hundred students, so they're never there. So I give up. As they say, you can't see it, but I tried to build a relationship with him, but he's just all over the place. I just gave up at this point. And this leads to the programming component. They really want to have a space for them to be themselves. Just have fun as well. Like, Black girls are still girls, they're children. They want to have fun. They want to talk about what's going on. they want to connect with one another. And one of the girls said, like, we have two disadvantages because we're female and we're African American. Just to know we're even included is important, and it helps us to be seen in the student body. So this leads to the implications. Bringing out their voices is very important. They obviously were able to articulate the problem and the need, but in that, as just as important, they were able to articulate the solutions as well. So for me, I believe that the study has implications in several fields: education policy, counseling, and also education administration. With policy, it might be a colorblind policy, but in the terms of the implementation process, that's where we're seeing disparities. How do we address implicit biases and cultural misreadings? How do we do that? In terms of counseling, all of the girls articulated a need to talk to a professional. They need to talk about things. They do not have maybe the resources at home. How do we address that? For education administration, all of the players in this field have a legal duty and loco parenti to act in the best interest as the parent when they are there. They all obviously have a commitment. So how do they meet the needs? I believe that the results from these findings can really highlight a voice that has not been heard, and doing so may stimulate conversation between the educators, administrators, and within the peer groups as well. So in order to meet the needs, you have to know the student population. At the heart of it all is a desire to positively influence policy, and also to advocate with and for a group that's historically overlooked. Thank you for your time.